Welcome to Pinpoint Pennsylvania podcast, Behind the Scenes. In this episode, Jason, Travis, Linda, and Nate reflect on their moving visit to the Flight 93 Memorial and engage in a compelling conversation about the memorial, missing an exit on the PA Turnpike, and where they were on September 11th, 2001. Enjoy this extra episode of Pinpoint Pennsylvania podcast.
So how are you guys doing today?
Yeah, welcome everyone.
Welcome.
Doing great.
We just went a couple weeks ago. We went on out and had a chat with the superintendent.
I'm still trying to unpack.
Are you still trying to find your way there?
Yeah. I almost missed it by 45 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, Travis is still driving on the turnpike.
Yeah. If you're going to the Flight 93 Memorial, make sure you're paying attention when getting off the turnpike. That's the moral of the story for me.
Yeah, pay attention to your GPS.
It took me 50 minutes to get back on track.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good tip.
Yeah, Pennsylvania Turnpike is not very forgiving.
No.
Love the turnpike for ease and speed, but you miss your exit, Travis, and
you're done.
yeah.
You're done. I had all the best of intentions to get there early, but it didn't work out.
Yeah.
One missed turn.
I can't really say much because I had to turn around because I forgot my Easy Pass.
We need to have an episode with PennDOT, find out how much money they make from people missing their turns on the turnpike.
Yeah.
It's got to be the money maker.
Or Easy Pass is not working. Like
I think subconsciously I'm mad that I have to pay a toll.
I agree.
yeah.
So,
I think that's it. I don't
country
care
road
too much. You don't
driver
care
in
enough
me.
about it?
No.
No.
So I drive through it and then get mad that I should have paid and I
Yeah.
didn't. I feel like that's partially
Yeah.
my issue.
Well, you've already done it in the past. Like, come and get it.
But I did, when we went to the Flight 93 Memorial, I did get to see some beautiful rural parts of Pennsylvania that I loved.
Oh,
Yes.
Somerset
And
County.
gave me some ideas for future discussion, especially Somerset County, around Bedford as well. And just absolutely beautiful out there. So
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to getting back out there and checking it out.
Yeah, it really highlights everything that the state has to offer.
No doubt
It's
about
beautiful.
it. The thing that really stood out about that day is it felt like the day of 9/11, didn't it?
Well, when I drove
Yeah.
up, I was the first one there out of the three of us. The three of us that went there, Jason, Travis, and myself. And what struck me when I made the turn into the park was there was an overwhelming sense of calm, first of all, because for whatever reason, like whatever music I was listening to or a podcast, like it seemed to just like go down in volume for whatever reason. And there was wildlife that ran across the road. I had to stop. I think I ended up turning the volume down just because I wanted to experience. When I got out of the car at the visitor center, like it's the beginning of August and it's supposed to be 100 degrees or
Right.
90 degrees. It was
No.
63 that morning. There wasn't a cloud in the sky.
Mm-mm.
It was just, and that was the first thing that struck me, Travis, was, wow, this reminds me of that morning of 9/11, how crisp
I just got
that
the
morning
chills.
was.
I got
Yes.
chills.
Yeah,
Because there wasn't, I remember there, I mean, maybe I'm wrong about this,
No.
but in Western Pennsylvania, I don't remember there being a cloud in the sky that morning.
No, you're right.
No. So it's funny you say that because I was actually off from work that day. I'd worked like 11 days straight, something like that. And I was sleeping in because I was going to get a haircut at like 10 o'clock. And about 9 o'clock, I got a phone call from my boss and bless her heart. And she said, I answered the phone and she said, I need you to come in. And I was like, why would you? I just worked 11 days in a row. I'm going to get a haircut. I have plans today. I'm off. And she's like, you don't know, do you? And I was like, what? And she goes, a plane hit the World Trade Center. And, I think with everybody probably had the same exact reaction. It's a little propeller plane, right? I mean, first word, propeller, a plane hit. Never would think it was an airliner.
Yeah, I think we heard that report on Howard Stern. I think he said that.
Well, yeah. So, and that's what I was saying. I, as soon as she said a plane hit the world, I was like, oh crap. So I was there about a year and a half at that point at that hotel. And I knew what it's like whenever there's any airline disruption. So I was like, well, going to work. And I think, I left a note on the refrigerator that I was going into work because we didn't have cell phones necessarily. I mean, I had a cell phone, but my then fiance did not have a cell phone. So, and she was at school or something. And so I drove in. I'm driving into the airport, the only car going towards the airport, and everybody else is coming from the airport. And listening to Howard Stern, like you said. And Howard had said that there was another plane that was not accounted for, and it was somewhere in the Pittsburgh area. And I thought to myself for a second, what am I doing? I'm driving towards the airport. Everyone's driving away from the airport. I'm going into, and we don't know what's going on, right? But as you do, I drove to the airport. Entering the airport, I get stopped by either county or state police, and they said, "What are you doing here?" And I said, "Well, I work at the hotel, and they need me there." And get in, and I'm walking through the back offices, and so I grabbed my bank and walked out, and there was a sea of people in the lobby, probably 250 people in a fairly small lobby at the Hyatt at the airport. And yeah, and so just jumped right in because there was 4 terminals. I got on the 4th terminal. The very first person I waited on, I said, "Can you believe this?" And he said to me, "Yeah, I can't." He's like, "You checked me in last night when my flight got canceled." He's like, "I was annoyed that my flight got canceled, but had my flight not got canceled, I would have been in the World Trade Center in my office."
Wow.
Sobering moment. But then again, that kind of brought it home. And, I didn't care that it was my 12th day in a row at that point. You do what you got to do.
Puts things into perspective at that point.
Yeah.
I think about where I was in Gettysburg College in the middle of the state, and same kind of day Nate had talked about. It was a clear day. I remember you could hear a pin drop when you were walking around outside. It was really something else. And I had gone down to the college lunchroom. It's called Servo, Gettysburg College, and starting to get my food. And the lady who was working, Mary, who was behind the breakfast area, had a TV in the back. And at that time, the first plane had hit, and everybody stopped and was looking at it. And I was in college. I had come from New Jersey, just outside of New York City. And so I was wondering what happened. And at that time, I had visual of it, so it did look like a commercial jetliner that went into it, but we didn't know if it was by mistake. So nobody knew what to do, and needless to say, I wanted to get back to my room. I went back to my dorm room to turn on CNN or MSNBC or whatever, and turn it on, and everybody's trying to cover it, what's happening. And by that time, the second one then went in. And at that point, nobody knew. I mean, if you guys remember, we didn't know if we were under attack, what the heck was going on. I tried to call my mother, and she was in Martinsville, New Jersey at the time. The phones were cut. I couldn't get through to her. And everybody started to worry. I remember going to my English class and writing, and my wife, Kelly, actually remembers this. I went to the English class and wrote on the board that I won't be into class today due to the tragedy in New York. I was very emotional about it. At that time, I didn't know that I knew people that were killed. And so did my wife, and it became very personal. We had grown up with those trade towers as our iconic view of the city skyline, and they were gone. And it was really it was so emotional to think about. And I just remember the stillness of that day, almost as if the sky was falling. Then you started to hear information about the Pentagon. Then you started to hear about Flight 93. There was, if you remember, there was confusion about the whereabouts of Flight 93, which is what made our visit so, that was the missing piece, I think, for me in the whole story of 9/11, and maybe gave me some closure in some ways, because going there and understanding the heroism of these people. I thought when I went out there that it was going to be a very depressing, reflective kind of visit, but it actually was. It was sad in a way from the standpoint of the tragedy, but it was also, it made me very proud of the people on the airplane. They had an opportunity to do something about it, to save lives and to save, perhaps another attack on the Pentagon, or I think that one was going to the Capitol, actually.
That was my biggest takeaway, and he even says it, and there's some dialogue in the episode between me and him where I say it shows the resilience of the American people. They've messed with the wrong people, and I think that, those 40 individuals, as we know, did a tremendous thing to fight against terrorism with not even realizing the impact that it would have long term on all of us.
And the presence of mind knowing that their lives were going to be over based on what they were doing. And when the listeners, when you go and visit the memorial, what we can't really describe clearly enough is the way that you stand at the memorial and you get a very clear depiction of the flight path of Flight 93 as it descends downward towards the ground, and the struggle on board the airplane that was happening at that time is just stuff that is so remarkable.
Yeah.
And to go into the visitor center and look at some of the memorabilia and learn the stories of the people on the airplane, it just really, it was, I was almost overcome by it numerous times while we were there. Truthfully.
There was a few times, and as I forget what Steve said, the 8th highest peak or 9th highest peak, and
I think 9th, he said
9th. And as you're standing there, because it's a plateau, you're above pretty much everything around you, and it is very it just adds to the whole memorial experience.
It's impressive.
Yes,
The whole area is impressive. Like I said, driving in,
yeah,
you really don't know what you're getting into, and then you get out of the parking lot, and there's this building. And Jason, you and I kind of joked about this, and not to make light of it, but when we actually walked down the trail to the wall of names and to the other part of the memorial where the plane actually crashed, we turned around, and the building itself actually looks like something out of Star Wars.
Yeah, it looks like
it's
looks
very
like a transport.
It's very impressive.
Yeah.
And with that day, there were no clouds in the sky. It was just like set against this backdrop. And I even said to you, I'm like, I'm gonna take a picture of this, and then I'm gonna go home and I'm gonna Photoshop 2 suns on it.
Yeah, it was wild.
And I was happy you said that, because at that point I was fixated on where did the plane hit.
Yeah.
And that's when you were saying, look out at that boulder that was
yeah.
placed there by the Park Service that Steve talks about a little bit in his discussion. But I just couldn't believe standing there, visualizing the flight coming in, coming down and settling down. And what did he say? Something like 100 trees were up in flames.
It's coming in at 534 miles per hour
at a 40-degree angle.
40-degree angle inverted. And he said when the plane impacted the earth, it accordioned on itself.
Incredible.
And set up the hemlocks behind the impact site on fire.
Well, and the thing is,
you remember seeing the pictures from that day. It was just like a bomb exploded.
Yeah,
absolutely.
There was no we're coming up on the what is it? The
23rd.
No. 30th anniversary of the plane that crashed out of Pittsburgh.
Oh, right. I hadn't even thought about that.
And the number of that flight escapes me. I saw it on the news yesterday, but
wasn't it 427?
Possibly.
I think so.
Mm-hmm.
I remember that clearly.
But I remember seeing pictures of that debris field, and it was massive.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I'm remembering this wrong, but it was a much larger area than this one.
Yeah, because I think it was coming in.
It was on takeoff, correct?
Yeah, that's right. It was it was shortly after takeoff. Yes. Yeah. And this was straight down pretty much on the earth. I mean, 40-degree angle, that's sharp.
Put your arm at a 45.
Right.
Yeah.
And then just go back a little bit.
Yeah.
That's to be upside down.
Yeah.
Terrifying.
It's basically, it was, a missile coming in.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, but think about the fact we were there 23 years after, and the parking lot was packed. People were streaming in there. There were teams of people.
That was one of the things that he said that I noted, that it was a Monday morning and there were a lot of people there.
Linda, I kid you not, it was just constant people. And Nate got there, he was the only one in the parking lot.
I was the only car in the parking lot. I'm like, oh, this is going to be great. We're going to have him all to ourselves.
Yeah.
We'll have as much time as we need. We'll be able to get any pictures we want.
Yeah. And
by 9 o'clock.
Yep.
That lot was full.
Yep.
And you maybe can hear some voices in our actual recording, but
you can a few, but no, I mean, it was pretty amazing. And then again, talking about the time that it's passed, and, Steve even mentions there was 13, 14-year-old kids that 9 years after the tragedy, they were born. It's very different. For those of us who lived through the day, those who read about it in history books. And I think that's why listening to what we have recorded, there's a huge sense of pride for me. As a matter of fact, I've listened to it multiple times now. I had to go into work last night, and I was driving in with my 16-year-old. He halfway through, we were pulling into the parking lot at work, and he said, I think I learned more about that day just now in the last 15 minutes than I have in school or going to either of the memorials. I was like, that's perfect. That's exactly what we want.
That's fantastic.
Well, and that's only the oral part of it. There's a whole entire museum there.
Correct.
What done correctly would take 3 to 4 hours to go through, and it's not very big.
Yeah.
In terms of comparison to the flight or to the 9/11 memorial in New York, but
Yeah.
it's definitely a few hours to get through that, to see everything, to listen to everything, to read everything.
And the listening piece is so unique to this memorial because the Flight 93 passengers, they knew what was going on.
Right. Being able to hear those phone calls must be intense.
Yeah. Yeah. It's something else. That was something else Jack said last night. He said, cause he's been to the memorial with school, and he said, probably some of the greatest, most important audio ever recorded. And I said,
excellent point.
You might be right.
Yeah.
You might be right.
Well, there were only 4 calls recorded out of
4 calls recorded.
Right.
37.
Out of 37. 37
Well, you have
made.
to remember at that time, cell phone usage was really not as prevalent as it is today.
Well,
I
Jason
know.
mentioned his cell phone, and I was going to say in 2001, my cell phone plan, I think, had 1,000 minutes on it.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
I don't
had
even know
one of
what I
those
had at
brick
this
For the
phones.
month.
I had a brick phone.
Yeah.
And in fact, I remember trying to use it that day to call both my parents and my boyfriend at the time
Mhm.
would have been. And it was impossible to get through.
Yeah.
I eventually just gave up because couldn't. make
You know,
any
I thought
calls.
about it. I thought about it after we were there. Technology was exactly what we needed it to be able to memorialize and remember that day.
Well, just having the technology to record a phone call in 2001
Right.
Right.
without, the suction cup microphone that plugged into a mini tape recorder, which is how my friends and I used to do prank phone calls in high school.
Yeah. Yeah.
And to have that wherewithal
Yeah.
to do that.
Right.
Obviously, the people answering the call knew that this was maybe something important, and
Right. Right.
yeah,
That's amazing
to
forethought.
your son Jack's point, that
Yeah.
those possibly are some of the most important recordings
Yeah.
that exist.
Wow.
I think about, communicating at that time. I used AOL Instant Messenger a lot, if you guys remember.
Right.
Yeah.
And when the phones went down,
Uh-huh.
I remember trying to communicate via that channel.
Right.
So I got to go back and look and see if I can find any of those communications.
You know what?
Oh, wow.
And that's the other, text messaging wasn't a thing.
No.
Not at all.
Not
You
at
know.
all.
Not at all.
Not to the level that it is today.
Yeah. I mean, because you had to press a button multiple times
Oh,
to get
right.
one letter.
You didn't have
Right.
that mindset.
No, you weren't
Send
thinking
somebody
about
a
it.
text was not a thing.
Well,
No.
we were still in the mindset of call.
Phone calls.
Right.
Well,
Phone
that's
calls.
actually how I found out, because I still worked for a marketing agency in downtown Pittsburgh at the time. And I was at work that morning, and my mom actually called, and because where she worked, she always had a radio on at her desk. So she heard the news immediately, and she called to tell me and how our office was set up. Like, we had our own little workstations, but there were no walls between them. So it was a big open room. And I was repeating what she was saying to me. I'm like, really? Are you serious? A plane hit the World Trade Center? And the person in front of me just turned around and just eyes big, like unbelievable. And we were web developers. So his first inclination was to pull up the internet and start looking at things. And sure enough, that's what was going on. So of course, we're all starting to talk about it. And my office building was on Smithfield Street, like right next to the Mon River. So we were all standing in my boss's office because he had a TV on the wall. We turned the news on, and we're all standing there looking at, PPG, which is glass, total glass building. Right. And then we hear about, the plane that has gone missing, and it's probably over Pennsylvania. And we're like, we're going home, So we all basically, the people who drove, got in their cars and left. And those of us who took buses went and just jammed ourselves into the next bus that we could possibly get onto and get out of town. And I mean, it was standing room only on those buses to get out that day. But we got out. And one of the things that always sticks out in my mind, most prevalent, was we were sitting outside in the afternoon, got home, like everything's settled and whatnot. We had a couple of friends over. We didn't have a roof on our back porch at that time because we had just rebuilt the deck. And we were sitting outside, and it's still a clear blue sunny day. And we noticed the lack of airplanes in the sky and how quiet it was. And it was like,
For days.
For days, yeah, because a lot of planes, we must have been under a flight path or something where we were at out there. But we were sitting out there, and it was just so quiet, and you never heard anything go past or saw anything. And it was just so strange. Just very creepy.
I mean, I think about that. There was an absence of an all clear.
Right.
If you think about most tragedies or most attacks, there's an all clear that comes from somewhere.
Right.
9/11, there was none.
Right.
And we were left wondering,
That all clear didn't come for a long time.
Are there more
come for a very
planes?
long
Are
time.
there? Are we
Right.
being attacked a different way?
Yeah, nobody
What
knew
could
what
possibly
was going
occur?
on. That was the fear.
Yeah.
Well, and think about the thousands, millions, probably even people that were stranded all around the country.
Right.
I being at the hotel at the airport, we had a lot of people. I mean, 336 rooms in that hotel. We were sold out for 3-4 days in a row. Nobody was really going anywhere. Occupancy continued to drop as people decided to figure out how to get home. There were no rental cars. People were paying $1,000 to a taxi to drive them to the DC area, Maryland, Hagerstown, Maryland. They needed to get back home for one reason or another, or just to be at home, because everybody wanted to be home at that point, and they just did whatever it took to get back, and that was happening all over the country, and that's the other thing about visiting the memorial. For me, it was therapeutic in a way. I even said to Steve, I felt very personal about the Flight 93 portion of the 9/11 attacks. And I'd been to Ground Zero, and my reaction to Ground Zero was not expected and very emotional. And so I think that I hadn't gone to Flight 93, even though it's an hour and a half or whatever it is away from where I live generally. So going there and experiencing and seeing everything, and seeing how the memorial does celebrate the heroes that were on that plane helped me a lot.
Yeah. I want to piggyback off what you said about the flight, everyone being stranded where they were.
Yeah.
And that was because every flight that was in the air got grounded at the nearest airport.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So all the airlines had planes that were not in the right areas.
Yeah.
Which brings me to where I was on 9/11.
Oh, geez.
I have a good story about this. I don't know if I've ever told you guys this. In 2001, I was working at a steel mill. I was an overhead crane operator. And that morning, was working a daylight shift. I was in my crane. I was pulled away from the dock where we parked the crane, and I was sleeping. And my cell phone kept ringing over and over and over and over and over again. And I finally got my bearings about me, because I had been sleeping, as you do when you're in your crane. You don't have any work to do. And I answered. It was my uncle. And he said, "Hey, where are you?" And I said, "I'm at work." He goes, "Where's Shannon?" And Shannon was my girlfriend at the time, and eventually became the mother of my children. And she said, "She's at home sleeping." He goes, "Why?" He goes, "Oh, we tried calling. We can't get a hold of her." He's like, "Don't you know what's going on?" And I said, "I have no idea what's going on. I'm at work. I got here at 6:00 this morning and been kind of sleeping ever since." He goes, "Yeah, the planes hit the World Trade Center." He said, "We just wanted to make sure Shannon wasn't in one of those planes." At the time, Shannon was a flight attendant for U.S. Airways based out of Pittsburgh, and nobody had any information about
where the planes
originated
were.
or where the crews originated. U.S. Airways had a pretty big hub in Pittsburgh at that time.
Yes.
And once I got that information, told him, and got the information from him, I'm like, holy crap. Then I radioed down to the guys in the pulpit, and I said, "Hey, you guys heard anything about the planes hitting the Trade Center?" And they were like, "Yeah, it's bad. It's real bad." So then I got on my cell phone and I called Shannon. She had just gotten off a 4-day.
A couple of your 1,000 minutes.
Couple of minutes of my 1,000. I might have even gone over. I called her and she didn't answer. And I called again and she didn't answer. I called a third time and she finally answered. And she, of course, was upset because she had just gotten off a 4-day and she didn't get home till late the night before. I told her what was going on. She got up, turned on the television, and she's like, "Oh my God, the building's on fire." This is 9... almost 10 o'clock.
Wow.
This was before the plane went down, and and Flight 93 went down. I might have even been on the phone with her, and I would have to ask her this, but whenever the second plane hit, because I remember, oh my God, there's a second plane. It hit the tower.
Yeah.
And it was just insane. Like the morning to me is a kind of a blur. It's a little bit insane. But to bring it back around to Jason's point, when the planes were able to go back up, they had to move planes around. They had the deadhead planes everywhere. And if you remember that on the 15th or the 14th of September, there was not like it is now. You could still walk into the airport and go all the way to the gate.
Yeah.
Jeez.
So I remember Shannon being like, I don't want to fly, but I can't turn down the paycheck. And I said, well, why don't I just go with you? Because at the time I had what was called domestic partner status, and I could fly anywhere for free. And I drove her to the airport. We walked in, we walked straight through security because there was nobody at the airport. We walked all the way to the gate. And I remember meeting the captain, the co-pilot, and I think there were 5 flight attendants on this. They were deadheading planes around the country. All the crews were brought into deadhead planes around. And then they were going to start their trip.
Wow.
I remember this. Shannon goes, this is my boyfriend, Nate. He's a domestic partner. I know we're going to Philly first. Can he deadhead with us? And I remember the captain looking at me and going, yeah, I think that'll be okay. So the very first flight out of Pittsburgh on Friday morning was a deadhead from Pitt to Philly, and I was on it.
Wow.
With Shannon and the crew. And I remember
That's incredible.
You know,
I can't imagine.
Have you ever been on an empty bus? Imagine being on an empty airplane.
Yeah.
It was entirely, I mean,
That's bizarre.
The crew, they did service for the other crew, but by and large, we were all sitting in first class.
Yeah.
To make a little light of the situation, and Shannon and I were dating at the time, and the other flight attendants were teasing us like, hey, you guys should join the Mile High Club.
Probably the easiest time to do it.
Nobody else on the plane.
Right.
I mean, we did not, of course, because that just would have been weird, and
Yeah, well, everyone knew on the plane.
Everyone knew
Right?
it. Yeah. But that's kind of like a little claim to fame that I have, is like being on the very first flight out of Pittsburgh
Oh man.
on that Friday morning, and it was a deadhead from Pitt to Philly. And
I
then-
flew 2 months after that, and I was just
I can't
Terrified.
Even imagine.
Yeah, I don't remember being scared, but I remember everybody that worked being a little unnerved.
Yeah.
yeah.
For
and
sure.
it wasn't long after that the restrictions went into place, and it was a much harder deal to get into the airport,
Right.
let
Yeah.
alone deadhead.
Right.
Because the deadheading rules changed, or not the deadhead, the domestic partner rules changed after that.
Sure. Yeah.
And you could no longer because it used to be, I could just walk up to any gate in any airport and say, I'm a domestic partner for US Airways. What do you have? This is where I want to go.
Wow.
And then
Yeah.
Not anymore.
yeah, it was a little bit different after that. And then it got a lot harder. And then of course, we ended up having kids, and she doesn't work there anymore, but
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it was fun while it lasted, but yeah, kind of my claim to fame there. And I know that was a long way to get to that story, and I'm not a very good orator.
No, that was
Not like you,
good.
Travis.
that was good, man. It was
Sorry.
it was moving. So you guys, I wanted to Stephen, I don't know if you remember when Stephen pulled me aside and
We weren't sure what he was trying to do there.
Yeah, Nate and I were a little awkward at the moment, but it was fine.
yeah, well, he was in, and it was great though. It was great though, because I was like, oh, cool.
It was kind of like in
I'm the
Field
man.
of Dreams when Terrence Mann gets invited into the corn,
Yeah.
but Kevin Costner is left behind. Nate and I were left behind, and you were invited somewhere special.
I've never heard a more accurate assessment of what went on, because Steve looked at me and he said, Jason, come with me. You guys go ahead over to the visitor center. Get started over there. So we walked over to his car, and he said, there's 4 of you that are doing the podcast? I said, yeah, there's 4 of us. And he said, well, these I helped design, and not a lot of people get these. He said dignitaries, friends, family members, folks that are the family of the folks that passed on that day, and presidents and governors and senators, they get these, but we also get them as well. So here is your Flight 93 memorial coin.
Oh, wow.
And we've got one side is it says Flight 93 Memorial 93, and then in the center, And then it says September 11, 2001. And on the other side, it is A Common Field One Day, a Field of Honor Forever, which if anyone continues to listen to us and listens to the episode with the interview, you'll find out how that saying came to be.
Yeah, that's a fantastic little story.
And then also in the center is of that side is the boulder with the hemlocks around it. And you'll learn that story as well in the episode.
How well depicted that is.
It's amazing.
Beautiful.
It's a beautiful coin.
Yeah.
Very honored to have
I
that.
know,
amazing.
right? Well,
Stephen, if you're listening, thank you so
Yes.
much for the tour and for the coin and for all of your wonderful knowledge.
and again, we can't thank them enough. The folks at the Flight 93 Memorial were very welcoming of us, and Stephen was a wealth of knowledge. It was very great day.
Thank you for listening. If you liked the episode, please be sure to subscribe and follow. Click the alert button so that you never miss an episode. For more content related to the Flight 93 Memorial and other travel locations around the Commonwealth, visit us at pinpointpennsylvania.com.